Welcome to the Museum of Vanning here in Hudson, Florida. We have nearly 50 years of memorabilia to show you. Historical look at the custom van clubs and vanning going back to 1966. So here we are on this part of the museum. One of the things that we like to tell everybody is to get you prepared for what we're actually trying to do here. Here in Florida, we actually have a very unique aquarium. The aquarium is an evolution aquarium. It's the evolution of man coming out of the ocean through the primordial ooze and walking upright and becoming man. The way we want to tell the story here about the world of vans is the same way. We've evolved from the start. Vanning started in Southern California, and we're basically that primordial ooze started when the servicemen came home from Vietnam, and they all had basically a statement to make. Those guys were rebelling against everything. We were rebelling against the Vietnam War. We were rebelling against everything, including Mickey Mouse himself with the rat finks. So the van was this perfect canvas for people to express who they were by painting this rolling billboard of who they were in the world. So it became a very unique sport. A lot of these guys were hot rodding their vans. The Volkswagen thing was kind of taboo back in the day. It was all about American vans, finding that old Bell truck or that old gas station truck and putting V8s in them and expressing basically, again, that who you were in the world. So our museum basically takes you back to 1961, which is this Ford Econoline that was made, one of the first vans built in America. To take you back historically, this truck, again, was built in 1961, continues on to this day, 55 years later. With the evolution of the van came the van club and the guys that started building them. We have documentation in this museum that dates back to 1966. Which is basically West Coast Vans, Associated Vans Clubs in Southern California that started the whole craze back in the day. We didn't see the craze in the Midwest till a few years later, but the vanning movement basically started in Southern California and worked its way east. By the time it got to the Midwest, it took a stronghold, and as it got to the east, it sort of diversified a little bit with the four-wheel drive trucks and the pickup trucks, but it never took as big a hold as it did in the Midwest. You're looking at over 1,000 hat pins, which represents clubs from all over the world. We have memorabilia in here from about 15, 16 different countries. These hat pins are clubs, event pins, just vans themselves. We also have over 3,000 patches, about 200 belt buckles. You see albums over here that have vans on the cover. And most of the stuff in the cases here are basically trying to find a home with just little memorabilia pieces that have come in goodie bags and over the years. Buttons and window scrapers and door emblems and basically a little knickknacks here and there. Mr. Van was a drag racer back in the day, opened up one of the first van shops in Chicago, and he just recently donated his racing uniform and his original helmet. He's one of our famous vans in history. He was very generous to donate a lot of his memorabilia. Part of the historical part is the van club, as we were saying. And if you look up, basically you see all our club jackets. These are our colors, where we fly our logos in the back of our jackets. At this point, we have 47 jackets on display. They're from all over the United States, from Southern California to New England. We have quite a few Canadian clubs up there, and we also have one from Norway and another one from England. With the museum being a non-profit, we have three processes going on in the museum to help us raise funds. The incorporation and non-profit means that we have to stand alone to raise money to keep us alive. So basically we have three programs going on in the museum all the time. The cases that are straight ahead of you are basically our biggest. The clubs or councils can sponsor one of these display cases, and they can put whatever they like inside of them. They can donate the memorabilia to the museum, or it can be an on-loan thing where they can put in and take out and change it around. We like to see participation in the museum more often than once, so as a way to get people back here to be more interactive with the museum is what we're trying to achieve. Back over here, second program we have in our fundraising is our brick pavers. These bricks are available to anybody who would like to sponsor a piece of the museum. We have these in 3 different sizes. Some of them are memorials or people that just like to have their name on a brick. We're going to do the back patio on these bricks someday once we get enough to do so. We have a lot of club bricks from around the country and around the world actually now, which is kind of cool. We think it's pretty neat to see all these different logos out on the back porch someday. So now we're going to take you over to a little different section in the museum. Over here again, we're still trying to display a lot of memorabilia. In my beginning of vanning started in the Midwest and in Detroit. So you'll see a lot of displays here that are from Detroit or Chicago or Cincinnati. I used to van a lot in Western Ontario, Chicago area. And so a lot of the memorabilia you'll see are from my early days of travel. I've always collected from the day I started vanning, and sometimes that's what happened. I was always finding that from our particular area. The display cases down here, we have a lot of lunch boxes in this display case here, a lot of ceramic. One of my favorite pieces, you can see this van right here on the top of the display case. And if you open up the top, it's actually a record player. And the record on there, of course, I would hope you would guess that that's Sammy John's Chevy van, the one-hit wonder in 1977. These are also record players. Some of the things we like to point out in the museum, if you look on the bottom, you see a little needle here on the bottom of it. Turn the switch on, the van actually runs around the racetrack, around the record player, and the music comes out of the top, out of the speaker here. The kids today call these things vinyl killers. The episode of American Pickers found one of those and said they were worth about $180. We actually have 4 of them in the collection. The case here to my right is a lot of ceramic. The vans across the top are from 1976 and 77. Then we also have cookie jars down here that are fairly new. One of the cool things about the museum is that we have such a broad range of stuff that spans nearly 55 years, going back into the very late 60s to present day. Van stuff has actually made a big comeback, so we see a lot of it even today. So you follow me through and we get to the real stuff, the big stuff. All of the trophies that you see on the wall to my right. And then the trophies above your head. All of these trophies are for the Ford van in front of you called the Royal Coach. I started building this van in 1975. It's a 74 Ford van, Econoline 302 automatic V8. We won just over 300 awards with this truck. Featured on the cover of Vans and Trucks magazine, May '79. It was shot at the 6th Nationals in 1978 and came out a year later. I've showed the van 4 times at the very prestigious Detroit Autorama, Cobo Hall 4 times, and won Best of Show in 1984 at the 12th Nationals with it. Those girls are actually ex-girlfriends that I sort of keep pictures of around. This van basically represents the 70s in its fullest degree. We have our red crushed velvet interior, mirror ceiling. There's an 8-track player in the dashboard with all the 8 tracks still in there. We tried to show you what the 70s looked like back in the day, and this is basically what vans look like: the crushed velvet, the shag carpeting on the floor, 8-track players, a CB radio in the ceiling. This was a lot of the things that we did back in the day. The windows are etched. We have a vinyl top on the van, which was kind of something that was unique back in the day too. No, I don't think it was for that, but. The murals were done by Rick Silex, White Wolf. They were put on the van in 1978. We won numerous paint awards with the van just because of it. The murals are all different all the way around. They are originally Frank Frazetta murals. He was a big graphic artist from the 60s and 70s. Used to do a lot of work for Hollywood movies. Very unique style, Conan the Barbarian type style. The black trophy down here in the bottom was our very first award we won in 1978, Detroit Autorama. The Stroh's trophies you see basically all over the van were a very unique show that we used to put on in Detroit that was sponsored by the Stroh's Brewery. We used to have a one-day show called May Day, and it was really, really cool. All the games centered around either drinking beer or rolling barrels of beer around the parking lot, and they sponsored some really great trophies. These were kind of unique because they were unopened cans of beer, but they were sealed, and that they made the trophies out of. So this van is a 1967 Dodge A100. The van was donated to the museum by Brian Bowie. It was one of the first vans that he actually built in 1977. It is an 8-door, 225 slant 6, which is a pretty rare van back in the day. The windows on the driver's side of the van meant that the doors were actually changed later on when he customized it. It never came out of the factory with windows on the driver's side, just in the doors. So the van's quite unique in that fashion. Just being an 8-door alone makes it pretty rare. Brian Bowie is an A100 extraordinary, built many of these vans over the years, owns quite a few of them even today. And Brian decided he wanted to give us a piece of the museum, and so he gave us the very first van that he ever built. Again, it's a 67 A100 Dodge. The 100 denotes the wheelbase that were on these vans. The wheels just got donated to us from a vanner in Michigan. They're American Racing on Mickey Thompson tires, which are very cool because they are very period correct 70s wheels that actually belonged on the van back in the day. See the cooler down in front, an old metal cooler from the 70s. The Notel Motel actually is a real place in Maryland. It's a hotel that is on the roadside America in near Baltimore. The van is kind of denotes everything cool again, with the bed in the back, the record albums that were displayed. It's basically orange shag carpeting and rock and roll music, and the bed in the back. That kind of said it all with vans, again from the 70s. The third thing we have in the museum is our fundraiser, is our Ring of Honor. The pictures that run around the center of the building up here are basically people who have come to visit us, people that have helped us paint a wall, or maybe made a little donation to the museum. For $20, people can give us an 8x10, and we're going to have, again, as my word is, interaction. We like to have people walk into the museum and say, hey, there's a piece of my van up there. There's a picture here. I went to that event. That just puts goosebumps on my arms when I hear people who can relate to stuff that we have in the museum. We could put 1 million pictures up here, but we like to put people up there who have actually been a part of the museum. It's a big thing for me and what we're trying to accomplish here. The door here you see off of Kris Carson's van. Kris Carson was a young man about 25 years ago that was in a car crash and ended up a paraplegic. Kris and his three buddies that night were out driving drunk, and his three buddies were killed in the crash, and Kris survived and was paraplegic after the wreck. Kris spent the next 25 years of his life basically teaching people the perils of drunk driving. He went to different schools and police departments and talked to kids about driving drunk and all that. Ironically, Kris put on a pretty good party at the Nationals every year, but he tried to tell people there was a time and a place. He learned that it was the right time to have fun and the wrong time to do so. Kris passed away again in another car crash last year, and sad to say that he spent his life teaching other people. So we like to honor Kris with this little display we have here of his. His father and his brother and a good friend of the family decided that a piece of the van should be with us, and so we hang it very proudly here in the museum. This is a fiberglass door that came off the van for when Kris used to go to shows and drag strips and do exhibition drag racing and wheel standing. It's a 750 horsepower V8 350 that was run on ethanol. He put on a great show for people, and after Kris had passed away, his father decided to put the original steel door back on the truck and was gracious enough to give us that go-wing fiberglass door to put here in the museum. The display here in the corner is basically dedicated to the National Street Van Association. They were the largest association dedicated to vanning. They started around 1973. Were responsible for 3 alternate national truck-ins, 75, 76, 77. Apologize, 76, 77, 78. A lot of this memorabilia is, again, a part of our past. We have had, it was sort of a dark area in vanning, a dark time when we had 2 sets of nationals going on. But as I try to tell everybody with this museum, good, bad, or indifferent, we want to tell a story. We're trying to tell the history, and we need you to know all of those pieces. It's hard to tell the story without telling some of the good and some of the bad. The NSVA was one of those things that helped promote vanning through the media, through the van shops, and through some of the biggest nationals that were ever put on were run by the NSVA. Some people have an opinion based on how the NSVA ran things, but there was a lot of behind-the-scenes things that we never knew about. It created a big divide in our sport for about 3 years, but we came out much better than we did before. And so here is a little display of a lot of that original memorabilia. Fred Blumenthal, who was the president of the NSVA, has visited us here and was pretty impressed with the collection, stating that I had pretty much more or everything that he had produced in those 5 or 6 years on display. To your left is going to be a future display we're working on, is a display that's going to be for the National Truck-In. Our Van Nationals is going to be 46 years old, coming up on 50 pretty soon. We are dedicating this whole display to our nation's premier van event, the biggest truck-in of the year. The display you see on the wall are basically picture frames that we are adding in and currently working on right now. And what we're doing is the winner of the National Truck-In's van will be on the trophy for that current year, and as he's dethroned, the picture will go back up onto the wall, so at some point we will have the winners of the past 50 nationals all on display. Again, a lot of our projects are ongoing, and we're looking for your help. We're looking for any kind of advice. We're looking for support and what we can do to help build these displays. And the National Truck-In is our higher honor every year, and so we want to make this display as cool as we can. And so we're just kind of waiting it out and getting everything prepared to do it the proper way. On display in these display cases where it's going to be on the walls is we have every Van Nationals patch, we have every hat pin, we have every dash plaque, we have every t-shirt, every Bible. So we're not missing anything in the history of the National Truck-In. I'm sure there's something out there we may not have, but The Nationals display goes back to 1973 at the first Nationals at Tiger Run, Colorado. Before we take you into the toy room, one of the things that we want to get you set up with is we have a couple of displays that are kind of unique. We have some pre-production resin pieces which ended up turning into be model kits. We have a lot of early radio controlled pieces here. Again, straight arrow from the movie, a Kiss van that we have in the corner. Our top shelf is what I call our little vice display. We have a couple of pipes in there and some shot glasses and a couple of ashtrays. People ask me why we have that here on display in the museum. And as I say before, we're not really hiding anything. We had a good time when we were in our younger days, and that kind of thing was part of our past, part of our history. And so we have a little display of that here, the things we like to play with back in the day. So welcome into our die-cast room, our toy room. You know, the van has been displayed with business companies and logos for, again, nearly 50 years. We have a lot of that on display here. I challenge you to find a company that hasn't advertised on the side of the van, from every superhero to movie to every plumber that drives down your street. The wall over here has 1,944 pieces on it alone, all in order of Matchbox, Hot Wheels, Johnny Lightning, Tiger Wheels, and assorted other companies. We're working on getting them all in order of release at some point if we can find the time to do so. The vans on the wall behind me, we have vans that are radio controlled, remote controlled. That means with or without a wire. We have vans in here that are gas powered. We even have a van down here that is voice activated. You tell it to go left and you tell it to go right. Every facet of every toy ever made has been somehow adapted into the van. One of our top 5 favorite pieces is this 1965 Ford Econoline made by Nylon Toys. It is one of my most valuable pieces. We actually have it here with the box. Some of this American-made tin is quite rare. We're happy to have about 12 or 13 of them here in the collection. This is actually a company here called Gay Toys out of Michigan. They weren't too politically correct at the time, so they ended up changing their name to American Plastics. We like them a lot because they're second-gen Fords. Vans across the bottom are all Tonka, again, American-made metal, which is something that's quite rare anymore. We quit making toys in America back before 1980. The one van here called Blaster actually is gas powered, and it has a key in it where you actually put the dial in it. When you put the dials in it, the van will follow the key and follow a pattern as you have it out on the ground. And running actually on gas, where you have to start the motor almost like a weed whacker type motor. Display again is a lot of American-made metal. Tonka, Buddy L are companies that we used to make metal toys in America back in the day. We got quite a few of these Tonka vans. A lot of the vans in the display again are nondescript. They're not Fords, they're not Chevys, and I'm not quite sure why back in the 70s they were doing it. Today we have licensing issues with particular companies, so they can't use a brand name. So a lot of our vans don't look like a Ford or a Chevy or a Dodge, but they're definitely vans. You can see the Bell System vans and camper vans, and different companies actually advertise on all of these. Down below is our working slot car track. We're hoping one day, again with that interaction, that you can come in here and play on our slot car track and race our vans. We like a lot to be able to do that. We like a lot of interaction in the museum. To your left over there is a display. These are all slot car vans that actually at some point will run on the track. Being that they're more than 30 years old, they do need a little bit of maintenance right now. And so we're hoping that when that extra free time comes along, we're going to get those running on the track again. To the left of that are vans that are all from Japan. We're fortunate to have a friend who goes over there every couple of years, and he brings us back toys from Japan. We like the boxes in those displays because they're all in Japanese. It's quite unique. So the display you're looking at now is the Mystery Machine. A lot of people today think all the vans that they see out there today are Mystery Machines or the Shaggy vans or a Shaggin' Wagon. We have quite a bit of this, and it's hard to display a lot of the Mystery Machine vans because they all pretty much look alike. I try to display some of the more unique pieces in the collection, and so we do have a lot more of it that's not on the display, but we like to put the pieces out that are a little different than the others. It's a little difficult to do that. The display here to my right is our monster truck and four-wheel drive display. I intended when I built this thing to put glass shelves in it with the light at the top was going to shine through all the way to the bottom. We ended up with so many monster trucks that didn't quite work out as well as I would hoped. The van you're looking at the top is called Rollin' Thunder. We hired this van in 1988 to come to our truck in Van Invasion in Michigan to do a show. I do a show crushing a bunch of cars in one van, one pickup truck. So basically, the cool part was we hired him to come out and do this show, and I got to ride with him inside this truck. The one thing about being inside of a monster truck when you're strapped in the passenger seat, you don't get to see the show. I hired him, I paid him, I rode with him in the truck and completely missed the show. When you're looking out the passenger side window of the truck, all you see is sky. I knew it was going on below me, but I actually didn't see any of it. If you see the picture there to your left, is a picture of Rolling Thunder sitting on top of a white Cadillac. When he was doing the show, he straddled that Cadillac just right, so when he came down, he broke the right front axle of the van. He actually continued the show and finished it, crushing everything, including our pickup truck, on the left side of the van. That night, a bunch of vanners got together and actually pulled the axle out of the truck and had them all fixed up and ready to go the next morning, except for the fact that after they'd done all that, they couldn't help but shrink wrap his van with about 8 miles of saran wrap. A lot of fun. His wife wasn't really impressed, but we had a lot of fun with it. The piece of axle you're looking at right there was given to us by a friend of a vanner's son who was about 8 years old, who went over and picked that thing out of the trash. I was impressed when I saw it about a year later in his toy room while he was showing me his model vans. I had asked him what this broken piece of steel was all about, and he told me it was a piece of Rolling Thunder. I was jealous immediately when he told me that, and about 15 years later he actually gave it to me to put in the museum. So we actually have a piece of Rolling Thunder in the collection. The vans we see here on my left are basically vans that are still in the packaging. I'm not a big fan of packaged toys. I like them outside in my mirror cases. But these are some of our more valuable pieces that we like to keep in there for just because kind of thing. Some of the vans we see in there are from a company named Majorette from France. Ironically, Majorette made one of the coolest Ford vans, American Ford vans we ever got to collect here, which were not basically available in the United States. Fortunately, living in Detroit, I used to cross the border a lot. And in Canada, those toys were imported. Corgi, Majorette were two of the things you could buy in Canada that we could not get in the United States. So being in the right place at the right time made for a very fortunate collection. It did help to build a collection where it is because of that. So we're quite fortunate to live in a certain area where we could go across the border back in the day when you could without any issues. The vans in the display case to the right, as you see at the top there, are some first generation Econolines. These are toys that are actually brand new. Again, we span nearly 55 years of toys in this collection, some stuff that actually was produced in the 60s. Now we have vans that were produced in the 60s being reproduced today. We're quite fascinated with that because we think the van toy thing and the van itself has made a huge comeback. And so being able to collect this kind of stuff is pretty cool. So the very first van toy I ever got, everybody asked me what was the very first one. Well, in this display case here in the upper right hand corner is a little red VW bus. called the Beach Bomb. It was a Hot Wheels that was made in 1969. About 3 months ago, there was a story on Antiques Roadshow. A fellow had brought a toy in that his father had given him when he was a child. It was a Volkswagen bus. It was what we call the Beach Bomb again. And in 1969, when this thing was originally made, it used to go through, they had a racetrack where the van would drive through this tunnel and it would get shot out onto the track. Well, every time it came out of that tunnel, it would fall off the track, and the kids were not very happy about it. So they redesigned the van. They took it off the shelf and redesigned it. The surfboards originally used to come out of the back window. Now they come out the sides. They did that to balance it out so when it was going down the track. So the guy says, okay, so what's my toy worth? My dad gave it to me when I was a kid. The fellow looked at him and he says, well, it's worth about $150,000. There is actually a pink one of this same version because boys didn't play with pink toys. It actually sold at auction recently for $1 million. We aren't fortunate to have one of those in here, so if you're thinking about anything, just take it out of your mind. The displays to my left are all plastic model resin kits. We have model kits going back to 1972. We're missing a few these days in the collection, but the popularity of vans and even resin model kits has gotten really big again, so the price of these things has gotten absorbently high. We have a pretty unique collection. There's not many vans out there we don't have. The diorama in front of you was donated to us by a guy named Mikey Midnight who liked to do dioramas of building custom vans. Luckily we got that thing about 2 weeks before we were getting ready to build this display. So we put Mikey's display right in the center of it and we built around it. The green van in the display case above it was a national champion. It was a top 5 winner at the National Model Association. You look at it, it's quite unique with a lot of molded work in it, gull-wing doors. Front doors are molded on it, a lot of chrome detail on the engine. Again, this was a donation last summer. The fellow was offered $500 for this piece, and he decided he'd like to see it in the museum. And I keep using the word fortunate because we are quite fortunate to get these kind of donations, put it on display for people to come and see. The little van that's here, the brown one, we had our Christmas party, our annual Christmas party in December last year, and the fellow came to the show with this in his hand and he asked me if we would like it to put on display. We never turn away anything like that. We love putting people's work in our museum, and we'll continue to do so. We want people to enjoy what they see here and be a part of our museum. We got kind of a unique display over here. These are all refrigerator magnets. These are those things we took for granted for so long, from the pizza guy that brought your pizza to the house, or your plumber, or the electrician. We've been collecting them and picking them off restaurant doors and in different places for more than 40 years. It's kind of cool when you see so much of this stuff together. One maybe means nothing to anybody, but when you put about 400 of them together, it kind of makes for a pretty cool display. So if you ever see one out there, stick it in your pocket and think about us. The vans on the left here, most of these are actually banks. If you take the van and look inside and open up the doors, there's actually a little box inside there with the key on the bottom. I actually have millions of dollars stored inside of these display cases in case the apocalypse comes around. And then to the right, as you keep moving this way, we have van toys in here from nearly 15 different countries. You see a little Aston Martin sitting there from the James Bond movie because the 2 vans next to it are from the movies, James Bond movies. These vans were actually made not just in China, but only distributed there. So they're pretty unique pieces, second-gen Ford toys. We have toys just a little bit above from there that are from Russia. We have stuff from Norway, from Sweden, Germany, Italy, England. Again, about 15 or 16 different countries worth of toys here. The vans are a worldwide popularity. These vans here are actually called fan vans, where you can squeeze them. No rhythm or rhyme on who they did. We did NASCAR, they did a little bit of college football, and some baseball. Teams decided they wanted to put these vans in their souvenir shops. They would call a company and say, make us one with our club logo or team logo on it. So they didn't do all the teams, but kind of cool to have so many of them done that way. This display is kind of unique, and we're really proud to have it in the museum. In 1977, Chrysler Corporation built a van called a Dodge Street Van. And when you bought the Street Van, basically what they did was they took the tradesman emblems off the doors and replaced it with a Street Van emblem, which is one of two of the coolest emblems ever made out of vans from the factory. Inside this box came a set of patterns that you would actually lay on some plywood. You'd cut them out and do the inside of your van with them. It was kind of unique for people that didn't know how to do basic, woodworking, but you could build your interior out of it. Also inside this case came a bunch of photographs that actually had pictures of different custom paint jobs you could do on your van. And there was also a membership to join the NSVA. And back in the day, vanning grew so extremely quick in the 70s that you think about the millions of vans that were made by Chrysler that may have got one of these kits, that how fast vanning could have grown just because of the paperwork that was in this box. The box is kind of unique more so than the paper inside, because most people, when they open the box to do their interiors, the first thing they did was throw the box in the trash. The box basically is in better shape than the patterns inside and much more collectible. Very rare piece to have here in this condition, in this shape. So one of the cool displays we have here in the museum is by a company called Highway 61. These are some of the most highly detailed toys that we have in the collection. These things, the drive shafts actually turn, the sunroofs and the vents open, the wheels turn, and the interiors are done. This was the first time in a 1/18 scale that we actually saw anything look like this cool. These were produced about 10 years ago, and then that's all there were. The company has been since bought out by a company called Greenlight, and they just came out with another one. Santa Claus actually just brought me the newest one for Christmas. We really love these in the collection because of the high detail and how much they actually represent the custom van. Just above the display is our Disney collection. Everybody has been associated with the van in some way, shape, or form. We have a couple of very early rare pieces up there, the ceramic Donald Duck and Goofy trailer behind it. Just below that we have a snow cone maker. You see the crank on the top of the van, you put ice on the top of that thing and you make snow cones with it. You notice that Mickey is actually driving that van on the right side. This piece was produced in Indonesia and very hard to come by here in this country. At the top you see the Happy Helper van. This is Minnie Mouse's little van. Maybe hard to see in that picture, but the front end you can actually see is an early Econoline, a first generation Econoline van. Somebody at Disney decided to create this van toy and put Minnie in an early Econoline. This toy is brand new and has just been issued here in 2018. We think that is just about as cool as it gets when you think that somebody at Disney decided to put a Mickey or Minnie Mouse in a 55-year-old van and produce a toy for it. Down below we have our superhero setup. Everybody had a van. Batman had one, the Joker, Spider-Man. We've got an assortment of all that superhero stuff. There are some other cars in the collection, like you're wondering why you're seeing Batmobiles. Well, we had that because it's sort of a relation to what Batman had in his movies. The Batmobile is a very iconic vehicle. We have pieces that are autographed by George Barris, who created the original Batmobile, the TV Batmobile in 1966. So we're kind of proud to have a little bit extra in the display that way. The Batmobile is one of my favorite cars as a kid, and having Batman vans and all the superheroes driving vans is just a plus at this point. So the next displays you're coming along, pity the fool! Oh, sorry, every time I walk by that kind of comes out of me, is our A-Team display. The A-Team TV show came out in 1983. Basically all of this stuff that is produced for the TV show came out in those first 2 years of production. The only thing that is not 1983 or 84 in this collection is right here at the top, the one van that was produced for the movie that came out about 6 or 7 years ago. They did a lot of action figures when that movie came out, and only one van toy actually itself. There are a couple of pieces in the collection you'll see right here in the center to say Brigada A. Brigada A is basically because these were produced in South America. This is Latin or Spanish for A-Team. Makes them kind of a rare piece to have. Again, things that were not particularly issued in our country. These are some of our more rare pieces here in the collection. Some of them are the more elite pieces in our A-Team collection. By the way, Mr. T never said I pity the fool in the A-Team. Most people relate him to that, but he never said it in the TV show. Does anybody know when he said it? He said it in Rocky. Yep. So this is our Micromachine collection. We got 125. These are the smallest vans in our collection. The display cases that they're sitting in are actually a die drawer from the 1920s and 30s. The original printing presses used to have little single block dies that had individual letters on them. You used to take these letters out and form different words. You'd ink them out and put them in the press, and then you'd roll the paper over the top of those dies. I found this display at a yard sale one day, and I didn't know what I was going to do with it. I just thought it was kind of cool, and I knew someday I would. And one day when I decided to build this collection, my micro machines fit right in there perfectly. I've bought a lot of things in this collection that I didn't know what I was going to do with someday, and filled the garage up for many years, but a lot of that's coming to life today. Hopefully some of you have seen the Transformer movies. I don't know if there was a van in the Transformer movies, but I know we have one here in the collection. This entire display is all Transformers. The two vans you see here in the front is what they transform to in the back. We like to play with our toys here at the museum just to make sure everything's still kind of kosher and works good, you know. The next display here is kind of unique because from basically here over, these vans are all the same. These are probably the cheapest vans we have in the collection. These would have been 69-cent vans you would have found at an end cap at a gas station at some point in between the 60s and 70s and 80s, maybe not so many 60s. But if you look at them, they're all basically the same porthole with the Ford front end on them, but the paint jobs are all different. This is generally where somebody in the collection walks up and says, Joe, how do you know you already have it when you buy another one? Well, basically what I do is I come along and I take it and I hold it up against the wall. I look to see if I have it. And then if I do, well, that's why we have a gift shop. And then, as I said, I keep talking about that 55-year span of toys. In the corner here, we have a company called Greenlight. Greenlight is still producing, or today produces, the 76 Dodge van, the 76 Chevy van. Some of them are 77s, they're calling. These are brand new toys that have come out here in 2018 and are producing vintage 70s and 80s vans. So the vans you see in this display case, a lot of them are again of that majorette from France. We have some Corgi in here. We have Tonka, which again, Tonka is one of the last of the American-made metal toys. Tonka comes from a town in Minnesota called Minnetonka, which again is famous for moccasins, Indian moccasins. A lot of these vans are nondescript. Again, we don't particularly know why. Basically, they're as boxy as a bread box, but they're all vans in their own right. And so, you know, we don't ask too many questions why they don't look like Fords or Chevys or Dodges. Some of the Corgi down here, like the one down here, is actually a radio. When you open up the back door, there's a tuner in the back so you can tune in your favorite radio station. Again, the next vans over here in this display are some of the low-dollar fun finds you'd find at little stores. The top three rows are called stress balls. They are actually vans that you would use when you got stressed out and you'd sit around and squeeze your stress away, I guess. But we like the fact that there are vans. The next display is Ertl. These are some of, again, of my favorite pieces. We have 48 of these in the collection. I have been to the Erdl Museum in Dyersville, Iowa, and there are a few pieces there I don't have. I have quite a few they don't have. I've done some research on these, but I can't seem to find out how many of these were actually made. One of my favorite pieces in the collection is this Dodge van. I always say in my story, taking people around, that if this van could drip the 70s, it would be everything the custom van was back in the day. If you look at the murals on the side, the porthole windows, the side pipes, the surfboards, the mag wheels, custom back door, this is everything that epitomized what the custom van was all about in the 70s. I absolutely love this toy. It's one of my 4 or 5 favorites in the collection. If I could turn every one of my other toys in to have a half a collection of stuff that was just custom like this, I would do it in a heartbeat. Most of the vans that have been produced have been company vans, like you see the Bell Company vans or PS&G. We actually even have a Canadian one here from Dominion stores. So this is our section basically from England. The Transit van has been built in England since 1965. The van that we now have today that's built in Kansas City at the old truck plant has been built around the world in nearly 20 different countries. This is what's called an MK1 or a Mark 1. This is a van that Ford has been building since 1965. The Transit van is one of the most important vehicles in all of England and Europe. They don't have pickup trucks over there like we have an F-150 or something. They use the van cutaway and produce hundreds of different variations on the body. It's been one of the most popular vehicles ever made on the planet. And for Ford Motor Company, it's been an absolute plus. The truck is built around the world, as I said, in nearly 20 different countries. And so now we actually build it here in the United States. It's considered a world van, and basically it's easily attainable and available to anybody around the world now. It has changed the face of the van anymore. The Econoline is something that was uniquely American. I was interviewed by Motor Trend magazine a couple years ago, and they asked me what I thought of the new Transit van and the new Dodge Sprinter and the Chevrolet van. And I said, well, the Transit's a nice looking van and we got to get used to it the same way we did in '75 when we made the big change. But I was disappointed in the fact that now, because we invented the custom van, we invented vanning and the sport of vanning here in the United States, I was disappointed in the fact that now we had a van that looked the same as everybody else in the world. The Econoline, the Dodge van, the Tradesman, these were all pieces that were exclusively to the United States. So I'm a little saddened to know that we no longer have those vans in this country, but I think the next generation of people come along will find a way to make these vans cool with a set of mags or maybe some flares on them, and we'll continue on with the new look. So this display basically is centered around the Aerostar that was introduced in 1985. When they did their introduction, the pictures they took were against the only space shuttle that never flew, the Enterprise. They thought it looked like the space shuttle, so they did a lot of their promotion based around that. And of course, living here in Florida, we've seen a few of those launches go up, so we have a little bit of display around it. And the fact that Tonka has made some NASA vans just made the display even more unique. So the next display here is our Coca-Cola. This display is completely centered around a promotion that Ford Motor Company, Levi Strauss, and Coca-Cola did in 1976. It's called the Dino Machine. They made 10 of these vans and gave them away as a promotion to promote those 3 companies. After the 10 were given away, 96 more of them were made where radio stations could actually buy them and do their own promotional things. 10 of these vans actually went to Canada. They're very unique in all the ways they were made. The faux wood van that you see here on the shelf was only available to people that owned one of those 106 vans. If you look through the display here and across the top, you'll actually see a piece of denim with the pockets and the buttons on them. This is actually a piece of the interior of a Dino Machine that I had found in a junkyard. A friend of mine in California says that he's bringing me more. He's building one in California, restoring it. So he's promised me the rest of the interior. The displays at the top, these are 3 different companies that actually use the Dino Machine in their advertising. Mallory Ignition, and different companies like that use the denim machines for promotional. The third picture or fourth picture there, you'll see denim machine is backwards. It's actually an unused t-shirt transfer. That's why the denim machine is backwards. And as you go to your right a little bit there, those are advertising, promotion, magazine ads. We got to meet the owner, the builder of the original denim machines, Ron Nichols from Chicago, and he autographed a bunch of pieces for me. The next two there are basically displays that would have hung off the edge of a counter. They're long and narrow, and they would have hung off the edge where a stack of of Coca-Cola would have been hanging. The top one is actually American, the bottom one is Canadian. The next display in that line there is a promotional folder that the radio stations would have received after they decided to purchase one of the denim machines. And it was basically a book that taught them how to give what to do and how to give the denim machine away. And so that piece is kind of rare because basically you had to be a radio station owner or salesman to actually get that book. One of the unique pieces I really like in my collection is this right here. When I bought this piece, I thought I was getting a van that was going to be much bigger. And when it came in the mail, I was a little disappointed to it. But the Japanese read this way. As you can see, it's an American Ford van. So after I had it a while, I did some research and found out that when you bought a bottle of Coke like this in Japan, they actually put this toy van on the Coke bottle. So for whatever the cost of that was, you got a little toy van that came along in the production. And once I learned the history of it, I thought it was pretty cool to have one. Okay, hold it. So here we are at Dino's Vanner Bar and Grills. The bar you're looking at is a combination 67, 68, 69 Chevy van. It was donated to us by about 5 different vanners. We started with the front end of the van in the top, and we have since added the doors. We found the headlight rings and the bumpers. Taz from Illinois gave us a lot of the parts to do that with. A local welder here took care of the fabrication to make the sides and finish it. And Zelda, Ed Fucci, actually did the paintwork on it. We really appreciate that, the effort that vanners have put into building this bar. We're hoping at some point to have all the lights work and the horns and everything else going. Funny story is I bought a fog machine. I thought it was kind of cool to have fog coming out of the front of it. I bought it last year during Halloween. The first time I turned it on, I turned around to put a CD in the CD player, and I looked and the whole entire museum was full of fog. We need to find out a way of regulating the fog that comes out of this machine because it didn't quite do what I'd wanted it to do. The wall behind me actually is a collection of all my truck-in mugs, our vanning mugs from the Nationals and mugs from all over the country. We're hoping at some point to move those Nationals mugs into our Nationals display, of course, because we're running out of room already, but they look kind of cool all together right now. In the ceiling are our license plates. We're getting banners from all over the country that are donating their personalized plates or plates from states that people have come to visit us from. Some of the plates are actually places I've been to visit to. We love van club plates and these personalized ones. I do have one story that's the top of the list on this whole thing. You see a van up there, plate called Super Van, right in the center from Iowa. Last year, we went on a museum tour, scouting out other museums to kind of learn the museum business. And while we were in Iowa, we went to the John Wayne birthplace. While we were there, we actually saw a custom van that was in the display called the Legend. But on our way there, we passed this very old, rundown apartment building. It was long and narrow with rooms on either side of a long hallway. And as we were passing it, in the middle of May, there was nothing around, and in Iowa, not even corn at the time, we saw a second-gen Ford van at the end of the apartment room. So we flew by it, and as we got to the other end, maybe 20 rooms long, sits another second-gen Ford van. So we were on our way to go see John Wayne's place, and the driver of the van, not being me, decided he didn't want to stop, and I had to beg him for hours to take us back to go find those 2 Ford vans. When we got back, again, not another soul in sight or another car in the parking lot, I started knocking on doors to find out what the deal with these 2 vans were. And with those 2 vans were a lot of parts, and I was just excited to find them. So I finally got a gentleman to come to the door, and it was right out of Roland Martin's Laugh-In. I knocked on door number 7 and door number 9 opened. So I thought, okay, this is a good start to this whole thing. Well, after talking with the young man for a little bit of time, I convinced him to sell me some parts out of it. And one of the things I wanted to do in this trip was bring back an Iowa license plate. And I asked him about one because I saw one laying in the center of the van. He goes, well, I can't really let you have that one because it's still current and I need it for my other vehicle. He says, but I have one that's inside the apartment you might like. So he goes inside, comes out with this license plate. He goes, I don't know if you'd like this one or not, but it's an extra one I have. This license plate he hands me says Supervan. I could barely contain my excitement when he showed it to me. And I says, well, okay, let's just throw it in the pile and walk out of there. It was probably one of the coolest finds I've ever found, just randomly asking somebody for something that we'd find a license plate that said Supervan on it. So in this display here, Ed Roth was a big idol of mine back in the day. Ed drew a lot of really cool cartoon custom vans in this display. He was the king of Ratfink. He invented Ratfink. And so I really loved that car culture, hip-hop kind of 60s surfing whole era thing. We love a lot of bamboo and that type of thing. And Ed was the king of all that. He built a lot of really wild custom cars back in the 60s and had some incredible van art. So I like a crossover of some of that stuff. The autographs you see on the wall of different shows that I went to while I was working, and Ed was the very first autograph in the center. Most of those autographs are from famous people, Don Garlitz and John Forrest and George Barris, of people that I'd met at shows. That basically they're painters and stripers, race car drivers that came into my trailer and autographed them. They were going to waste in my trailer, which I quit using years ago, so I took it apart and brought it here into the Tiki Bar and put them on display. So we'd like to invite you up to our second story. Upstairs we have some ongoing projects, so we'd like you to come on up and see what we're doing. So up here basically is going to be our library. We have a lot of ongoing projects in the museum. And what we want to do is one of the things that we learned when we went on our museum tour was that every one of those museums had a little movie you could sit and watch, hopefully a lot like the one you're watching now, where you learn about the museum you were there to visit. We want to put a video room in here. We have a really big collection of movie posters that included the custom van, super van, the van. We've got seats out of different vans that we want to use for your lounging area. We hope to have a big screen TV in here to watch a lot of these. We have tons and tons of old VHS movies, a lot of the stuff on DVD now. This is one area we're kind of proud of because my collection that you don't necessarily see includes every van magazine ever made. We have Hot Rod magazine going back to 1969, which is basically the only place you could see about custom vans. That's where it all started in the media. Part of the collection, and the heart of my collection, is stuff like this folder here. This is original dealer literature. This is going back to 1961. This is the brochure you would have picked up when you went into the showroom to buy your new van. We have these going back right to the start. Every year, Ford, Chevy, GMC, and Mopar. Every year going back to when we think the van started, and we recognize 1961. These albums are all full of that kind of memorabilia. Matchbook covers and stickers, photo albums and different things that I picked up along the way. We also have many albums here from Europe. As I said, I continue to say we have van stuff from around the world, from nearly 20 different countries. So we've been collecting this kind of stuff nearly 50 years. And right now, as I say, this is one of our projects that we're really trying with your support to help us put together. Fundraising is a big deal for us. Being a nonprofit and incorporated in the state of Florida, we rely on our visitors and guests to come and help us put this museum together. It's because of that support that we've gotten this far, and we really hope that we're getting the word out there to enlighten people on what we're doing. We're telling a story, we're telling our history, and it wouldn't happen without the visitors and the people that come through and support us. Another cool thing we have in our collection we kind of like is all the original glove box manuals. This is the little book that came in your glove box. Again, that we have these going back to 1961. Ford, Chevy, Dodge, this happens to be a Dodge van, one from the early 70s. And it's kind of a unique part of the collection that I hadn't figured out how to display yet. And we're still working on that. But that's what's going on in this area of the museum. So the last part of our journey here through our Museum of Vanning is something that we want to do that's basically never been done before. Something that was part of the American landscape in the 70s that is now basically gone. One of the things that in the day was when you wanted to buy your van parts, you went to a shop that was uniquely custom vans. And in that shop you found porthole windows or octagon steering wheels or a drink tray or lights, things that were uniquely vans. Those kind of places are gone now, and what we want to do here in the museum is recreate that. We want to build what looks like an original 70s van shop. We're going to cover the walls in porthole windows and drink trays and fender flares. And through your support and donations, we're coming along pretty cool with some of that stuff to go in here. We've done a bunch of research to find out how these buildings actually came about back in the day. A lot of the van shops that popped up in the 70s were old gas stations or warehouses that guys moved into maybe for just a couple of years, and then they were gone. They went into these shops, framed out the walls, put pegboard on the walls, and hung van parts up on the walls. That's what we're going to do here. We were going to go real fancy with drywall and make it really very modern looking. But through this research, we found out that that's not what these shops look like. We're going to have windows out front, maybe a flower pot or two in the doorway here. And we're just going to put pegboard on the walls and hang a lot of these cool old van parts up. Again, through your support is how we're able to make all that happen. And if you got an extra part or two laying around in the garage you can't use anymore, we'd love to have it. We want to put it on display here in the museum. That's sort of the end of our tour here, and we really appreciate you coming by to see us. If there's any more information you'd like to find out about the museum, you can find us out on Facebook. We have a website, themuseumofvanning.com. Give us a ring, come on by and see us. It's your support that keeps us going. We love having visitors here. We love talking shop and old vanning with you. Come by and see us. I think you'll dig it.